How you doing, everyone? I've got Penelope joining me here again. And, well, Penelope and I were discussing the topic of this video, which is banned books. She wants to get down. Banned books. Now, if you've seen my videos, you know that I am from the state of Iowa. Iowa has implemented book bans in schools. Now, I understand the argument that reading material for kids should be age appropriate. I get that. But who determines age appropriate? I mean, if you think that your fifth grader is not mature enough to read something that most fifth graders are, should it be banned from all of those students? Excuse me. Actually, speaking of banned books, I have one right here. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This book has been banned because its repeated use of one particular word. That word is a racial slur. If you've read the book, you know how Jim is referred to. But in the context of the book, it makes sense. In the context of the story, we should not use that word, of course. But what was Mark Twain writing about when... was he being flat out racist when he wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn? No, actually he wasn't. It was actually a work of satire, using vernacular that was acceptable at the time. And, you know, that word should have never been acceptable. I'll agree with you on that. But let's be honest, we all know that that has been acceptable, actually up until fairly recent American history. Banning books. What else could be learned from some of these books that they want banned? By the way, Penelope got behind the camera there, and she's kind of messing around over there, so that's why I'm kind of going like this. So, other books that have been banned. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. The Color Purple is another book that has been banned. In the past, Judy Blume had books that were banned. And I understand that some of these books do in fact have some sexual content in them. I get that. And that should be, you know, age appropriate. But it's not usually graphic sexual content. In fact, I remember when I was a kid, I was reading some books that were available in school libraries that I didn't understand the content was sexual at the time. I still understood what the book was about, but I didn't understand at the time that some of that content was actually sexual in nature. But was it really sexual, or was it more geared towards kids who, hey, look, this is what's going on with you right now, you know, as far as, you know, like the physical changes that kids go through at a certain age, right? And really, that's what it was. Some of the books, they deal with racism. Color Purple, for example, and Why the Caged Bird Sings. They deal with abuse. I tell you what, how many of you know a kid who's been abused? I mean, think back to when you were a kid, okay? You know, that kid that always wore long sleeves or a turtleneck? Even on hot days? You ever wonder why? Yeah, the kid that never wore shorts to school? Yeah, and then sometimes they just don't show up for a few days at a time. You know, they got sick with something. And you know that still exists. That still happens. Of course it does. So, dealing with abuse. You think maybe we shouldn't have books like those, and I think maybe it's a good idea to have those kinds of books available for kids who are going through something like that, so that they can understand that what they're dealing with is not normal. How many little girls do you know of that, you know, be it a father or an uncle, does some things that he's not supposed to do with that little girl? Yeah, that's a subject matter in some of these books. Don't you think those girls ought to know, have access to information to understand, to better process how to handle those situations? Some of them deal with bullying. I mean, you know, I get it. It's 2024, not 1984, you know, when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, you're being bullied, just punch them in the mouth, and that's it. A lot of times you become friends afterwards. You can't do that these days, and that's probably a good thing too. I mean, sometimes things, you know, a lot of people my age like to complain about changes. You know, people my age and older like to complain about how this world is changing. Well, it always changes, mostly for the better. Not always. But have you ever stopped to think about why some of these books are in schools? Now, should they have outright smut? Of course not. Of course not. But if you're going to deal with violence in the form of bullying or child abuse, or maybe a friend who gets killed in a car accident. In fact, one of the books, and I can't remember the title off the top of my head, one of the books is about a school shooting. Yeah, kid gets bullied to the point where he shoots up the school. And you can make the argument that kids don't need to see that kind of material. And I'm going to make the argument that, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Because that will help them process and actually learn and think and use their brains instead of, using fists or guns or whatever else to solve their problems. I mean, should some books be kept out of school libraries? Yes. I mean, there are certain reading materials that I don't even think are appropriate for adults that should be kept out of schools. But overall, as a rule, banning books, bad idea. Oh yeah, and by the way, as I've heard it said, banned books are the best books. I'll see you next time.